Alright guys, so this is just a general outline that the video will follow. I do suggest that the first time you view this video, you kind of watch it in its entirety. I'm going to supply timestamps down in the description of the video so that you guys can skip to any sections you might want to review in subsequent views of the video. As you can see, I try and walk you through in such a way that I introduce you into the instruments you'll be using, giving you a little demonstration of what the instruments look like, or some suggestions on how to handle them while using the simulator, and then showing you just how sensitive they are. And then I kind of break it down into giving you some suggestions on as to how to manipulate the leg while you're scoping, and finally kind of wrapping up the video with a diagram and a walkthrough of the scope that you'll be doing. And finally, it's like a formal walkthrough where I perform the actual diagnostic knee scope you guys will be doing in the study. So if you feel like you have a good grasp on most of the material later on, as you continue to view this video, make sure to you can always just skip to the actual walkthrough of the scope so that you can see that. Alright guys, just another tip when we're talking about cameras. As I mentioned, your viewing angle is controlled by moving your light source. So these two pieces, as you can see, rotate independently of each other. So it's possible to change your viewing angle by simply the base, or by changing the light source. Now, common practice is that you want to keep your base as still as possible, as stable as possible, and such that your viewing angle is only controlled by your light source, right? Keep in mind that your viewing angle is always going to be opposite to the light source. So here, if my light source is pointing up, that means that my viewing angle is actually pointing 30 degrees downward. If I switch it this way, well, then it's facing this way. If I put it downwards, I'm now facing 30 degrees up. Okay? What you might happen is, while you want to hold this as horizontal as possible, in order to attain a certain orientation in the knee, you may have to rotate the base of this camera just slightly, so that you get your tibia to be horizontal, and the rest of it is just playing with this viewing angle. Okay, this button just controls your camera function. So when you press it, it shows you the actual camera view, so a first-person view. Whereas if you happen to click it again, it'll give you a third-person view. So that's really all there is to this. These handles that you see that the probe is connected to, these are your haptic feedback sensors. And so what you'll start to notice is that as you move along, while there's no bones or anything inside here, you're going to notice that it feels like you're hitting something, be it a ligament or a bone, and you'll feel it. This will kick you back. So it's there to provide you a more realistic arthroscopic view. Because you're just starting, you're getting used to it, you don't want to make gross movements through all three axes. You got to remember that while this is projecting a two-dimensional image on the screen, you're actually performing the scope in a three-dimensional system. So what you want to do is, initially as you practice, you want to move solely in one plane or in one axis at a time, such that you can keep track of your depth in either direction or up. So this would be demonstrating just one axis going inwards, going left or right with the probe, or going up or down. Again, as I mentioned, you don't want to move blind. So if I'm going to decide to go up, I want to make sure that there isn't an articular surface or ligament that I might damage. So I'm going to shift the viewing angle to be superior. And this is somewhat limited. And then I can see I'm moving up. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. Well, let's say I want to move left. Oh, there's that one axis I'm talking about. If I want to move right, there's that other axis I'm talking about. Or if I want to, ideally the easiest one to move in is going to be in and out of the knee, as you can see. I'm going to concentrate let's say that you're getting frustrated because you keep getting green, but it just won't hold, right? And so you got to realize that once you have the blue done on the screen and whatnot, you're going to want to at this point it just becomes to fine motor movements. So you want to keep the base of the camera as still as possible, and then just try and see if you can fine tune your visualization with the viewing angle. So I know that I'm looking superior, so my viewing angle is optimized there. Now it just becomes a factor of just getting the camera oriented properly, and as soon as very fine movements, as soon as it turns green, see, and you can lose it. So you just keep it there. This clip is just to show you the two portals that you could access during the knee scope. So you have your lateral and then your medial portal. You can ideally put the camera in either portal, but you'll most likely resort to just the lateral portal. Alright guys, so in this section we're just going to be going over certain knee positions that you might have to use during the knee scope. So starting off, you'll see me move the knee up from flexion up into extension, and also supply a valgus and varus stress. In the video you'll notice that I'll emphasize the valgus and varus stress a little bit more. And so the importance of these is the valgus stress opens up the medial compartment of the knee, and the varus stress opens up the lateral compartment in the knee, and that's just to open up that space and help you with visualization in those spaces. And you'll just see me kind of move that. The other thing is, throughout the video you'll hear me drop little hints or suggestions as to which knee position might give you the best visualization of a certain structure you're after. So just keep in mind and make those mental notes and kind of correlate it to what you see here. In this section, I'm just going to show you an example that the simulator actually does take into account the varus and valgus stresses, and you should see the joint space opening up, the tibia kind of shifting down when you supply that, in this case, a varus stress. For either a visual diagnostic scope or a visual plus a probe scope, this set of skills is going to become more important. And so what you want to get good practice at too is obviously knowing the positions of the knee, but more importantly is practicing how to sustain it. So what I'll do is, if I'm going to bring the knee into extension and I want to probe it, I won't have, if I just have the visual camera, I'll have one hand at my disposal. So I could theoretically use the camera with one hand and then try and visualize it that way. I like to use two hands when I'm switching the light source. So you'll notice that what I do to keep the knee locked into extension is I'll kind of bring it up just over my hip, and I'll apply just a little bit of pressure, enough to where the friction holds it, and now that leaves me both hands free. Now the other thing is, I could, if I want to supply stresses in extension, so for example I want to supply a valgus or a varus stress to the knee, it's just a matter of me pushing up against the knee to open it up. So that would be its valgus stress. If I want to bring a varus, then what I could do is simply support it with this hand and switch over to the other side and do the same thing with my hip. If not, I can put the probe down and just simply by using this hand put the stress, valgus and varus stresses on the knee. The same can be done in flexion. You could potentially also use your knee to do it that way. That way it leaves this hand free. Or if you're just visualizing, you can use your hand to supply those stresses, or just a matter of using your knee. You visualize the structure, bring it in, do it that way. And so here again we're just demonstrating. I'm not going to have any probes in my hand, but just to show you, let's say I bring the knee into extension and I'm going to have to use a probe or the camera with both hands. So what I'll do is I'll tuck it up right over my hip so it kind of sits on that little ridge, and then supply just a little bit of a force to keep it there while I'm free to operate or the instruments with my two hands. As I mentioned, what I can do is to apply a varus stress, it's just a matter of pushing up against the knee with my hip that way, or I can use this arm while I visualize it to apply a valgus or varus, or if I'm not free with this hand, I'll use my hip or just switch to the other side and use the other side of my hip to apply the valgus stress. Again, knee orientation is pretty important to help you with visualization. If I'm chasing the patellofemoral groove, I know that that's kind of the junction between the patella and the femur, and I know that as the knee is in flexion, the patella comes closer towards the femur or rides on that femur, and therefore that space is going to be smaller inflection than if I was to release the tension on the quadriceps tendon and then just keep it in extension. This should open up the space, and as I'll typically use my right to adjust the light source because I'm right-handed, but so you guys can see a little bit better, I'm going to hold the base of the camera and make sure to hold it steady. And so this is a proximal portion of the medial gutter. So if I actually want to look towards the distal portion of it, what you'll see me do is not so much mess with the camera, because then it gets a little bit choppy and a little bit harder to visualize. It's simply changing my viewing angle, and there I get a nice view of the medial gutter simply by holding my hand steady and doing that. It's all playing with the light source, as you can see there. Now if I want to visualize it a little bit closer, then that's when I proceed to move the camera probe inwards, and then I can again change the viewing angle somewhat this way. Now we're chasing the medial gutter, right? We've seen the plateaus and the cruciate ligaments, and I've already stated that they're best visualized in flexion, so that's why the knee's oriented this way. Again, if you wanted to open up, you would just do a valgus or a Varus stress to give you a bit more space to work with for the plateaus. The way the simulator is going to want you to do it is going to want you to survey, as I showed you on the diagram, the distal and proximal portions of the lateral condyle. And so you'll be coming off, when you finish up, you're going to be coming off surveying the lateral tibial plateau. So your knee's going to be in flexion. Now you can continue to try and survey the lateral gutter by going off this way and then probing in and out that way. But if you notice, you're somewhat limited, and you need to keep in mind that most of your femur, especially the proximal portion of your femur, is up here, right? So to make your life easier, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring your leg into extension, right? That way, now your tibia and your femur are lined up perfectly. So your reference frame is there, rather than always using your tibia as a reference point down here. It now switches. If you're in flexion, it's difficult to kind of more or less know where the femur is without actually palpating it. By bringing the leg into extension, now you have that common reference frame, that same continuity. So you know that if the edge of the tibia is here, well, so is the edge of the femur. And so what you're going to do is, now this allows you to ride up and down the femur. So I can ride up more easily by keeping the leg into extension. The other thing to keep in mind is, because you're in the lateral portal and you're here, you have to keep in mind that you want to keep your viewing angle to kind of point inwards this way. So if you follow my finger, you want your viewing angle to be surveying, better shown to you by using my left hand finger. It's kind of, you want your viewing angle to be somewhat this way, such that as you probe out this way, you still get to view and survey that way. And so that's what you'll be doing as you go up and down this way, right? So you don't have to worry about jamming the scope in and out of the lateral gutter this way. Now it's just a matter of simple movements up and down. Okay? Alright, cool. So within the video, you keep hearing me say that the simulator is going to want to walk you through a circular survey of the knee, and this diagram I drew is hopefully going to help you guys get an idea of what I mean. So within the diagram, you can tell that I've numbered the pathways according to what the simulator, or the tasks the simulators are going to want you to accomplish and in what order. But not just that, you're going to also notice obviously the femur up top, the tibia at the bottom, these two circles. So this is the location, relatively speaking, of the patella in extension, and this is the location of the patella. Actually, this would most likely be a little bit more centered here, but you can tell that it kind of obscures some of your tasks that you're going to be coming after. So while not completely accurate, I just wanted to draw it to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. So when you first go into the joint, this is going to be your starting point. You will be going in through the lateral portal. You'll be starting here. Again, you want to orient your camera such that the way this diagram is, where the tibia is at the bottom of your screen and it's horizontal, because now you have a reference point. Once you start, your first task is going to be chasing down the patellofemoral groove, which you know should be right here where the patella slides up and down the femur as your knee goes from extension and into flexion and vice versa. So you can tell that ideally you want to access this, you want your knee to be an extension because you'll see that the patella rides up. And without that, it gets rid of this patella blocking your way. So it obscures and now clears up that space, right? And so therefore, now you have access to that patellofemoral groove. Then once you're here, keep in mind that while the space is grossly exaggerated here on the diagram, the space obviously within the simulator is a lot smaller, and so it's going to come down to kind of very minute, small adjustments in your position with the camera probe or the viewing angle. Here, obviously, your movement is going to be mostly probing up and then playing around with the viewing angle to make sure that you're not running into anything. And it's a difficult spot to visualize, so what you might want to do is use a patella, try and bring the patella in to make sure you're in the neighborhood. Right, once you do that, it's a matter of surveying this by simply changing the viewing angle on your camera. Once you find it, then you move the same way. You change your viewing angle, move downwards, come down to the lateral plateau. If for whatever reason you've changed your orientation, once you come down here, it just helps you if you orient it back to where it's horizontal. So you're down, it's going to take you up to the intracondylar notch, which is going to be 5. So the other thing that's worth mentioning is once you peek down, this, and this are best visualized in an extension, because in extension you get to ride up and down this gutter, right? Once you get into the joint space, then ideally you want to maximize that joint space. So to open it up, you want to bring it into flexion. That gives you great access to here, gives you excellent access to the 0.5. You're still in the joint space, so you come back down to 6. After 6, you're going to want to bring the leg back up to extension because you're going to have to be riding up and down the gutter, the lateral gutter. And so, you know, it's in your best interest to kind of keep it in extension so you can just ride up and down that way and just survey the lateral condyles of the femur. Once you finish up with 8, you see it takes you back down to look at the cruciate ligaments. Not entirely sure why they don't do that while you're still in the joint space, but they just want to bring you back, and so that's why I drew it with a different color. Again, because you'll be going back into the joint space, you want to keep the knee in flexion. So you'll bend it, open up that space, go down to analyze the insertion of your ACL, the origin of your PCL. And once you hit all those blue dots and turn them green, the task will automatically terminate for you. The other thing to keep in mind is, like I mentioned, these are minute changes in position. If you end up moving too much, the simulator docks you for the distance you traveled. If you're a little too hard on the tissues, be it the ligaments, the meniscus, or the articular surfaces, the simulator will dock you for that as well, and then also times. But again, this is just an exercise. You guys will be learning as we go. Again, something we can say is, remember here you're only going to be using the camera. You don't have to worry about using the probe at all. So if need be, you can choose to use both hands or one hand to manipulate the camera. So let's go ahead and get started. So once you start the screen, wait for it to load. Alright, you'll see this pop up. That means it's ready. Bring up your camera, you can move it. You notice that again I'm playing around with the light source. You can see it on screen and doing that. So then what we'll do is we'll start off, keep the knee in flexion just because it's the largest joint space in that regard. Once you're in, boom, you hit the camera. Again, it's important, always get your orientation. So here's the cruciate ligament orientation such that the tibial plateaus are horizontal on your screen. That way you know that based on anatomical pictures, tibia is always at the bottom, and so it should be at the bottom of your screen, so you just orient yourself a lot more easily, and femur's at the top. So patellofemoral groove, again, that's best visualized in extension because the patellar tendon is relaxed in extension, so you open up that space a little bit more. So what I'll do is, keeping the same orientation, I'm going to go ahead and bring the knee into extension. And I apologize if that pink keeps popping in. Software is a little bit finicky there, so I'll just do that. You'll see the structure's moving a lot closer, so I'm going to back away a little. As I bring it into extension, keeps knocking me out of the joint. So bring it into extension. Alright, and so there I am in extension, right? There's the femoral notch. So I know I have to be a little bit upwards, right? Bottom is the tibia, that's my femoral notch. So I know that the intercondyle or the patellofemoral groove has to be up here, where the patella slides in and out through there. So I'm going to use, now that I know that I'm oriented somewhat, oh, there's a blue dot. I'm going to see if I can get a better view of it just by changing my viewing angle. This might be a little bit dizzy, so I can't. I did have the best view at that point. And so I'll just keep it there. And now it's just a little bit of fine tuning by probing the camera or moving the camera around. And there we go. So now, keep your camera still, orient yourself. I know I'm looking at the patellofemoral groove. And so the way I'm looking at it, because bottom is towards down here, my medial side has to be over here, and my lateral side has to be towards over here. So I know I'm going to have to glance somewhere over there. So without even moving my camera and just using the viewing angle, there it is. I didn't move my camera at all. So now now that I have a good view, that I've established my viewing angle, what I want to do is just use the camera to fine tune that focus. And there it is. Now, this other instruction tells me, let's look at the distal portion of the gutter. So I know that it's got to be down that way based on my orientation. If I'm looking at it, this is a femoral condyle here. This is the proximal portion of the gutter, so I know I got to go down there. So again, keep my camera steady. Viewing angle. Now that I've established a good view, that's when I proceed to fine tune it by moving my camera towards it. There you go. So that's a distal portion. This is the medial tibial plateau, the medial meniscus. This is femoral. They're asking me to find the medial tibial plateau. I want to open up that joint space so I get a good view. Again, if you're not sure, you can play around with your viewing angle, see if you can kind of, oh, there it is, right? So what I'm going to do is open up that joint space so I have more room to work with. So I'm holding it steady so I don't lose my orientation. There it is. I'm going to put my camera such that my tibia is horizontal on the screen. There it is. Have a good view. Fine tune it by bringing in my camera gently. I want to make sure not to damage the cartilage. Oh. Next thing is intracondylar notch. So I'm going to move a little bit laterally, and in this direction I'm just pulling out on thing. So I know, because my tibia is in the bottom, my intracondylar notch has to be somewhere above me. So again, keep my camera real steady, and I'm going to change the viewing angle. Look at that. Just by changing the viewing angle, I'm able to bring that in without much movement on the camera. Move it there. Steady. Now it's a lateral. Again, keep my camera. See if I can visualize it with just viewing angle, and I already have a hint. So I don't turn my camera. I just push the probe in a little bit deeper. There you go. Gentle. Remember, this is just a visual survey, so now it's the lateral femoral condyle. So I'm looking at the lateral gutter. So I'm going to keep going this way, still visualizing where I'm moving. So there, I know that's where it is. Now I know I'm going to ride up, because the way this diagnostic goes is I go around in a circle in the knee. So if you look at a diagram at the knee, I'm starting superior, going all the way around, and completing that. So I'm going to eventually have to ride up the lateral gutter. So I'll keep my camera there, keep it steady there. And then I'm going to bring the knee into extension so I get a better view of that lateral gutter. And just by doing that, let me make sure that the knee is kept in extension, and now it's just a matter of fine tuning. There it is. Sorry guys, the software gets a little weird here. Now I'm moving up, so I want to visualize as I go up there. Now probe it. Make sure to be gentle. And there you go. And so now they want me to survey cruciates. You can see that this is a patella. That's the condyle. I'm going to ride down the lateral gutter again. So I'm going to visualize it inferiorly. Sorry, it keeps popping me out. So I can just ride down there, make sure that I don't involve any articular surface. Staring down. riding down. There's my tibia. And now I'm in flexion. Okay? So I just did that. I just followed the anatomic base so I don't involve any articular surface or come close to damaging it. So here I am. This is my ACL, and you can see my PCL back there. So again, hold the camera steady. I want orient on the bottom. Now it's just a matter of fine-tuning the camera, get a good visual there. Insertion in the PCL, or origin in the PCL, is going to be right there. Just look, it's all viewing angle, and then I just fine-tune it with the probe once I can see better. Alright, that's for the vision.